Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Continuing on with college football week 7. We're on to Saturday. You guys know the drill. Same as the other weeks. Going to get to as many games as I can. Not going to be able to get to them all, but we'll talk about them all on the live show. 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live for 2 hours up to kickoff. Let's have ourselves a good one. Bet responsibly. Let's get into it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. UCF's on the road against Cincinnati, and we're talking about a red-hot Cincinnati Bearcats team coming off back-to-back huge conference wins. Road win over Kansas, then they beat Iowa State, put up 38 points, 37 points. Vibes are high with Scott Satterfield and this Cincinnati team right now. Now, when I first looked at this game and I saw it was at 10.5, I was like, that's a little bit of an overreaction, right? UCF isn't a bad team. Scott Frost has that program heading in the right direction. But now that I'm looking at the injury report, I completely understand the line. So when we're talking about the UCF offense against the Cincinnati defense here, looks like we might see the third-string quarterback for Central Florida again. Taven Jackson, that's the starting quarterback. He re-injured his left shoulder in the Kansas game, which was the same one that he injured the week before. So not only was he already hobbled, but he re-aggravated the same injury. Not sure if he's going to play in this game. And the backup quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown, he wasn't even active last week. He's also dealing with an injury. He had gotten hurt the previous week against Kansas State. So we might see the third-string quarterback again for UCF, and we saw some of that in the Kansas State game. It didn't look pretty. And this is a Cincinnati defense that just got their star defensive tackle back, Dante Corleone. He's probably the best player on the defense. He was hurt. He just came back. So Cincinnati's defense is in better shape as well. So talking about UCF going on the road with a possible third-string quarterback against a Cincinnati defense that's healthier than at any point in the season. So after taking a look at the injury report, I do understand the line. And the truth is, I mean, if neither of those quarterbacks are able to go, how can we expect UCF to keep up with Cincinnati's offense at home here? I mean, this offense, they got up to a slow start in the Nebraska game. They opened up against Nebraska. Since then, they have been humming, and on a full season basis, they're looking like one of the most efficient offenses in the entire country. They're 8th in success rate, 5th in PPA. Now, the UCF defense has been better than I expected. I've really got to tip my hat to Scott Frost. He's done a great job there. Remember, this is his first year back with the program. He's got mostly a new roster. So this UCF defense does look better than I was expecting it to. But the thing with the UCF defense is I have questions about the competition. I mean, who have they really played? The only decent teams they've seen in terms of offenses are Kansas and Kansas State. And they did play okay in those games, but they didn't cover the number in either. So this UCF defense, better than I thought. Still not a great defense, and still not a defense I would trust to make stops on the road against Cincinnati. After looking at everything, I do think the number's justified. Cincinnati's rolling right now. The vibes are high. I think they probably win this by 2 touchdowns plus. So it could be a dog walking. Cincinnati minus 10.5 for me. Charlotte, Army. Well, as we know, Army's got one of the worst pass defenses in the country. It was on full display in that, what was that, a Thursday night ECU game where I had Army. They were getting cooked up there in the first half. So Army secondary is a definite liability. But Connor Harrell's it's official. He's out for the season. Connor Harrell is Charlotte's quarterback, by the way. And he was actually playing all right. Charlotte, not a good football team, but there was actually moments where Connor Harrell looked like he could be pretty good. He's out for the season. They've also got a lot of injury problems on the offensive line, but I was having trouble figuring out who was even supposed to be the starter. They lost a starting guard like 4 plays into the opener. I believe they also lost another starter in fall camp before the season started. I think they've got a couple of offensive linemen listed as questionable. I was having trouble deciphering who was supposed to be the starting offensive line for this Charlotte team. So they've got a second-string quarterback, or maybe even a third-string. We'll talk about that in a second. And they've got offensive line problems. This is not a great season here. Tim Albin, year 1 with the team, he's dealing with injuries, and he doesn't have the most talented roster. In terms of the quarterback, so Grayson Loftus started last week. What was that, against Rice? I forget which game it was. But South Florida. So Grayson Loftus started that game for the injured Connor Harrell. He was, I have the stat line right here, 2 for 11. Ready? He was 2 for 11, -1 passing yard. He was 2 for 11 with -1 passing yard and an interception. So yeah, he got benched. Zach Wilkie came in and he actually played pretty well. Here's stats on the screen. Threw for 150 yards. He actually played pretty well. It's important to take note that when he entered the game, South Florida was up 26-0 already. So, I mean, let's give him some credit. He played well, and it looks like he has won the starting job. But, I mean, South Florida may have been sitting back in coverage, taking their foot off the pedal. They may have mentally checked out. They're up 26-0 on Charlotte at home. So, I don't know. I don't want to take too much away from these numbers. And when it comes to Army's defense, like I said, I don't trust this defense at all. I do want to give them a little bit of credit, though. Last week, I didn't bet the game, but I honestly thought UAB was going to be able to light this Army secondary up. UAB is a bad football team, but they can throw the ball. They can score points. Army actually did a great defensive job on the road last week. Held them to 13-point success rate under 38%. And like I said, UAB's got a respectable offense. So I still don't trust this Army defense, but we do want to give them some credit. They're coming off a good performance on the road against UAB. On the other side of the ball, don't have a ton of hope here for the Charlotte defense. This Charlotte defense has really struggled to get off the field all year. 128th in success rate, and I mean that's Army's specialty. You cannot get the offense off the field. It's not exactly explosive like last year's Army's offense with Bryson Daly and Kanye Udo and them, but still 79th in rushing success rate. That's their strength. They can't get the offense off the field, so I find it hard to believe that Charlotte's able to get off the field here against that option. We actually did just see this Charlotte defense up against an option offense. Week 4 they played Rice, and honestly they weren't that bad. Defensively, Rice won the game comfortably. That was the game Connor Harrell got hurt in, and they looked like they were going to be competitive with Rice early until Connor Harrell got hurt. But, I mean, 28 points, 6.09 yards per play, 44.9% success rate. That's not that bad against Rice, but that was at home. Now they're going on the road against Army's offense, who's a lot. Their option's a lot better than Rice's option. Rice has a brand new head coach. It's very new. So I don't think this Charlotte defense can get off the field. Army should roll them, honestly. Charlotte's going to struggle to score. That kid looked like he can throw it, but he was down 26-0. So I would take Army minus 18 here. Pittsburgh, Florida State. Looks like Florida State keeps getting hit at the 10, but Pittsburgh keeps getting hit at 10.5 or 11. So we're kind of bouncing back and forth. At the time of recording, we are at a flat 10. Pittsburgh, Florida State. I got to say, when I first looked at this one, and I was actually talking to people in the group chat about it, thought this number was way too high. Was sitting at 10.5, and I forget who I was talking about it, but I was going back and forth, like, how do you lay 10.5 with Florida State to Pitt with that defense? The more I looked into it, the more I actually do get the line. We'll talk about it now. So as far as where these two teams are at right now, obviously both took a tough loss in Week 5, and Pitt bounced back from their tough loss. In fact, they bounced back in a major way. They won 48-7, convincing victory over Boston College. Meanwhile, Florida State follows the loss up to Virginia with another tough loss, and that final score is not a good indication of how that game went against Miami. If you watch the game, 28-22 is not how that game went. Miami beat the hell out of Florida State. Florida State scored a couple touchdowns late to make the final score look a little more interesting than it actually was. So Florida State badly in need of a win. Pitt coming off a 40-point victory over Boston College. When we're talking about Pitt's offense, it's kind of tough. We're looking at the season-long numbers, and how seriously do we take these? Keep in mind, we've got a new quarterback now. Heinschel is now the quarterback. It's no longer Holstein. So we've got a new quarterback who looked great last week. And another thing we have to keep in mind when we're looking at these year-long numbers for Pitt's offense is they played a few games without Desmond Reed. He missed the last 2.5 games for Pittsburgh. So they've been missing their star running back, and also these numbers are with Holstein at quarterback instead of Heinschel. I mentioned Heinschel takes over last week. They obviously went 48-7. He played excellent. Look at his numbers, 323 yards through the air. Boston College has a pretty strong defense, too. This is a great first start here for Heinschel, who's a freshman, by the way. So vibes are high with this kid for Pitt. They think they got their quarterback of the future here. Something we should probably point out, though, Boston College was missing both their starting corners in this one. So, all right, Boston College was missing both their main corners, but still, don't want to take credit away from the kid. He played great his first ever start. But now we get to a spot that nobody ever wants to back. We got a freshman making his first career road start at Doak Campbell. We've seen plenty of instances of this situation failing so far this year. Not necessarily Doak Campbell. I'm saying a freshman making their first road start. There's been plenty of examples of that falling flat on their face so far this year. I will say Florida State's defense, though, last couple weeks, a little shaky after starting out the season looking like a powerhouse. Through the first 3 games, they were allowing 10 points per game, under 4.2 yards per play. In their last 2, though, they're allowing 37 points per game, 5.4 yards per play, success rate over 46%. So the Florida State defense coming off back-to-back shaky games. Now, good news for Florida State on the defensive side of the ball. They were missing a DB. Ashland Barker, he missed the last 2 games. He played in the first 3. So it looks like he has returned to practice, and he thinks he's going to be back. So Florida State should be back at full strength on the defensive side of the ball for this one. So good news there for Florida State. And honestly, if you're asking for my opinion, I think Florida State's defense is going to look really good in this game, even if Desmond Reed plays. Oh, I forgot to mention. So it looks like he is on track to play, but they also said that last week. He actually suited up last week and didn't see the field. So I'm not really sure what's going on with Desmond Reed's recovery. Desmond Reed's their star running back. I don't know if I mentioned that. Pitt's star running back has been out. So from what I'm reading, he has a good chance of playing, but I was also reading that last week, so I don't know what's going on with his recovery. But even if Desmond Reed plays, I'm not sure how effective he'll be. We've got a freshman quarterback making his first road start, like I said, and Pitt is also banged up on the offensive line. Last week, they lost their left guard for the season, Keith Gavea. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. So their left guard is out for the season, and their left tackle left the game last week against Boston College. He's listed as questionable. So there's a chance they might be going into Doak Campbell with a freshman quarterback, a running back that we're not even sure if he's 100% or what the deal is going on with Desmond Reed, missing the left side of their offensive line. That's a possibility here for Pittsburgh. Yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. So I completely understand the 10.5 point line on that side of the ball. I will say, on the other side of the ball, you can make a case for Pitt. I mean, we know Florida State wants to run the ball. Gus Malzahn is calling the plays. He likes to run the football. They're 8th in the country in run frequency so far this year. That could be a problem here because Pittsburgh has one of the strongest defensive fronts in the country. They're 6th in success rate per rush, 6th in PPA per rush. This was an elite run defense last year. I think they brought 5 of the 7 starters in their defensive front back this year. So it's not even a surprise that Pitt has a strong run defense. We were expecting Pitt to be strong up front, and they've lived up to the expectations. So Florida State is an offense that wants to run the football. I don't know if you can count on Florida State just running the ball in this Pitt defense. I mean, who's run the ball on Pitt so far this year? If you look at the last 4 games for Pittsburgh, and these are their 4 FBS games so far this year, they're allowing under 74 rushing yards per game, under 1.89 yards per carry. This Pitt run defense has been elite. So how could we possibly lay 10.5 points with a team that wants to run the football against this run defense? Florida State might also be missing their right tackle, Micah Pettis, in this game. He left the Miami game injured. He's listed as questionable. So how can we lay that number? And the answer is on the other side of the ball. I mean, Pitt's offense might be an absolute prison here with a banged-up offensive line against going on the road to Doak Campbell against a Florida State defense that badly needs a win. They really need to bounce back. I think they're going to be all over Heinzel. So I think the reason for that big line is Florida State's defense should be a nightmare for Pitt offensively. So originally I was like, how can you lay this big number? I'm actually leaning towards the Florida State side now. Now you might be thinking, Kyle, why is the total so high, 57.5, based on what you just said? How are we going to see 60 points in this game? And the reason the total's so high is it's Pittsburgh. Cade Bell is the offensive coordinator, and they run a very fast pace, one of the fastest paces in the country back-to-back years. So you're not going to see many low totals in Pittsburgh games, but I do think this game stays under. I think Florida State's going to be diligent and stick with the run. They have the stronger team. They're going to trust their defense. So I do think this game stays under. It's tough taking an under in a Pittsburgh game because they move so fast, but yeah, I lean towards Florida State, and I'm considering, I see a 58.5. You know what? I'm going to bet that. Give me under 58.5 in this one. UCLA, Michigan State. This one got up to 9. They raised limits to 10K. It looks like UCLA actually got hit at the 9. We're down to a flat 7 now, 20K limits. UCLA, Michigan State. We all know what UCLA is coming off of. The big upset win over Penn State, 24-point underdogs. They pull it off. And looking at UCLA's schedule, how do these 2 games happen in the same season? How do you get blown out at home by New Mexico, and then beat Penn State in the same season. Crazy. This year's been crazy for UCLA. So can UCLA keep this newly found offense moving on the road out in East Lansing? Well, remember, before we even get started, we're talking about a cross-country traveling Big Ten team. And this year, last year, these teams have not fared well. I mean, Penn State is a good example of that. When a Big Ten team flies out to the West Coast, or a West Coast Big Ten team flies to the East Coast, or middle of the country, I should say, they tend to not play well. So we know we're getting that from UCLA before we get started. Michigan State's defense, I will say it's been a slightly better. That Nebraska game, their defense played slightly better, or they definitely played better than the final score indicates. You look at the score here, 38-27, and your first reaction would be, Michigan State got lit up in this game. It's not exactly what happened. In fact, Michigan State's defense played all right. They turned the ball over 3 times, and it wasn't really the defense's fault. Not that the defense played excellent, but 37% success rate, 5.5 yards per play. The defense wasn't put into the best situations here. Michigan State was also playing that game without 2 starters in the secondary. Their safety, Nakai Martinez, and nickelback Willie, they both missed the game. They're both listed as questionable. They might return for this one. So Michigan State's defense might be a little bit healthier here. Now, personally, I think Michigan State can play a good defensive game here. I don't like backing the offenses, the Big Ten offenses, when they go cross country. I'm a little worried, though. Nico does seem to be figuring it out. On the last 2 games, they actually got one of their wide receivers back 2 games ago, Rico Flores. He returned from injury 2 games ago. He's got 8 catches in the last 2 games. I'm not saying he's the sole reason for this, but we're seeing Nico's passing numbers start to look more efficient. In the last 2 games, the QB rating looks good. He's taking advantage of when he has a clean pocket. Look, I think we might need to just throw everything out about the UCLA offense, because they definitely look stronger right now. Despite all that, like I said, we're talking about a traveling Big Ten team. So I do think Michigan State could play a good defensive game here. But I actually like the matchup for Michigan State's offense in this one. Should be a great spot for Aiden Childs to play well. He's at home against a traveling UCLA defense that, I mean, so far has looked like by far the worst defense in the Big Ten. They're 136th in success rate, 129th in PPA. This defense just cannot get off the field. UCLA has not shown much of a pass rush at all this year. 26.3% pressure rate. This is not a good pass rush. Aiden Childs, who has a tendency to hold on to the football too long, should have time to work in the pocket. If there was ever a spot for Aiden Childs to play well in a Big Ten game, it's right here at home against UCLA. And unlike the UCLA offense that seems to be coming around, the defense really doesn't. I mean, I guess it's been a little bit better in the last couple games, but still 49% success rate. This defense just cannot get off the field. Jonathan Smith likes to run the ball. He likes to run a very slow-paced offense. I think Michigan State's able to sustain long drives in this game, hold on to the football for 6-7 minutes at a clip, keep Nico on the sidelines. I think Michigan State's the play here. It's at 7.5. I know laying a big number with Michigan State's a little scary, but I think this is a really nice spot for Michigan State, and I think they win this one comfortably. Give me Sparty minus 7.5. Miami of Ohio, Akron. This one was at 10, then 10.5, and now we're at 11. So not a ton of action in this one, but the action that has come in seems to be coming in on the Miami of Ohio side. Miami of Ohio, Akron. So both these teams coming off nice wins, and yes, you heard that correctly. The Akron Zips coming off a nice win, 28-22 over Central Michigan. Now, does that mean their defense all of a sudden isn't terrible? No, we know this is a bad defense. They're 110th in success rate, 121st in PPA. Now, I don't really like the Miami of Ohio offense either, but this Akron defense, this was a concern coming into the season, and they pretty much looked as bad as we expected. They may have won the game last week against Central Michigan, but they got run all over. They allowed 238 rushing yards in the game, almost 6 yards per carry, 51.4% success rate per rush. So, yeah, despite getting the win, Akron's defense certainly still looks bad. That being said, I'm not big on this Miami of Ohio offense, and the weakness of this Akron defense is the defensive line. That was the concern coming into the year. I didn't even know who was going to be playing on this defensive line. Miami of Ohio might be missing their main RB here, Kenny Tracy. He was injured during warmups leading up to the NIU game. He didn't play in that one, and it doesn't look like he's going to play here. They're also missing their backup running back, Josh Ringer. So they might be missing their top 2 backs here. Definitely thin at running back. Now, you could make the argument that Akron's defensive line is so bad that it doesn't matter. And Miami of Ohio has been running the ball pretty efficiently in their last 3 FBS games, 49% success rate, 4.7 yards per carry. So they have been running the ball pretty efficiently. But back-to-back road games, missing both running backs. I'm not big on this Miami of Ohio offense as it is. I don't know. I don't know if I trust Miami of Ohio to exploit this weak Akron defensive line. And on the other side of the ball, is Akron back? I mean, remember, Ben Finley was banged up. That's their quarterback. I was actually expecting this Akron passing attack to be somewhat decent by Akron standards. Not good, just by a pretty good passing attack by Akron standards. Really wasn't living up to that. Ben Finley got hurt. Then he came back last week, and they were moving the football. 28 points, 47.1% success rate, 6.39 yards per play. So is this Akron offense finally looking like I was expected? I thought it was going to be middle of the pack MAC offense. So definitely a good sign that Ben Finley was healthy and on the field for Akron, and the offense seemed to be working. Problem is, Miami of Ohio's got a really strong defense, and I know this graphic doesn't really show it. 91st in success rate, 48th in PPA. You got to keep in mind they opened up the season with back-to-back road Big Ten games, and then they played UNLV. So Miami of Ohio opened up the season with some really strong games there. I think now that we're getting into conference play, I expect Miami of Ohio to have probably the strongest defense in the MAC. So I don't necessarily trust Akron's offense to do much against it. But like I said, I really don't trust the Redhawks to exploit that defensive line either. This is a big number, Miami of Ohio on back-to-back road games. Give me Akron. I also lean towards the under, but Akron likes to throw the ball a lot. Joe Moorhead likes to throw the ball a lot. So give me Akron, plus 11.5. Toledo, Bowling Green. The Toledo minus 9.5 got bought up pretty quick, but it looks like there was some buyback on the Bowling Green side at 11.5. We're now down to a flat 10 at the time of recording. Toledo, Bowling Green. We got both these teams coming off a bye week. Both should be healthier. Both were a little banged up. So Bowling Green's defense, who was banged up, should be coming into this one healthy. But to be honest, that just doesn't change the fact that this isn't a good defense. Remember, this was a great defense in 2024. Bowling Green had one of the strongest defenses in the conference last year, but they lost everybody. It's a brand new coaching staff with Eddie George, and this defense just isn't very good. And Toledo, I personally believe this is the best offense in the MAC. So even though this graphic doesn't make it look like much of a mismatch, I truly believe this is a big mismatch. Tucker Gleason should have no problems making throws in this game. Bowling Green, specifically against the pass, terrible. In their last 4 games, they're allowing 9.88 yards per pass attempt, over 51% success rate per dropback. They've been terrible against the pass, and Toledo has a quarterback that can throw it. I mean, on paper, Toledo should be able to score on mostly every drive in this game. I mean, they should blow Bowling Green out, if we're being honest. The problem is Toledo has a history of losing these games. I saw a stat. I forget what channel I was watching. I would like to give them credit. I think it might have been College Experience. But I saw they read off a stat. No team has lost more games outright as a double-digit favorite than Toledo in the last whatever years. So Toledo has a history of just fumbling the bag and losing against these really bad teams. We just saw it in week 4. They should have blown Western Michigan out. They lost outright. So on paper, Toledo should absolutely smoke Bowling Green. I'm a little hesitant to back them. Personally, I think coming off the bye week, they'll be fine. After already losing one of these games, I doubt they'll sleepwalk through this one. Would only be Toledo here for me, minus the big number. Alabama, Missouri. This one was at 3.5, but they got bought up. We're now sitting at a flat 30K limits. Alabama, Missouri. Well, the Missouri Tigers have not had much success against the Crimson Tide. In fact, the last time Missouri beat Alabama was 1975. It's a long time ago. Was that 50 years ago? Been 50 years since Missouri beat Alabama. Now, they've only played 6 times in that span, so it's not like they're playing every year. But Alabama, 6 straight wins against Missouri with an average margin of victory of 26.83. So they haven't just beat Missouri, they've beaten the hell out of Missouri. That being said, if there was ever a time for Missouri to finally beat this team and knock them off, it's right here. It's a very favorable spot for Missouri, and we'll get into it in a second. As far as matching these two teams up on the field, it's tough because Missouri, in terms of overall net efficiency on the field so far this year, they might be the most efficient team in college football on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the strength of schedule is certainly in question here. But look at the Missouri defense. 6th in success rate, 12th in PPA. It just really comes down to, do you believe in the numbers that Missouri's showing us so far this year? Keep in mind, this is also a Missouri team that hasn't played a single road game this year. So when we're looking at the Missouri numbers, I mean, yeah, they look excellent. They haven't played a single road game. They haven't seen the toughest of offenses when we're talking about the Missouri defense. Their 2 toughest games were Kansas and South Carolina. They did play some solid defense in those games. Success rate under 34%, under 5.3 yards per play allowed. So let's give them some credit. They saw some decent competition in a couple of times this season. The defense did look solid, but neither of those offenses are comparable to Alabama and what Ty Simpson's doing right now. We know Ty Simpson had that rocky opener on the road at Florida State. Since then, the Alabama passing attack is looking like it might be the best in the country. His numbers look great in the last 4 games, and I mean, he's played the Wisconsin defense is tough. He went to Athens to play Georgia. He played Vanderbilt, which maybe not the best defense in the world, but that's certainly a good team. So, I mean, Ty Simpson is a quarterback I believe in. If you're betting Missouri, you're looking right here. Ty Simpson so far this year, he's been excellent, does have a tendency to hold on to the football. The reason that could be significant, look at the Missouri pass rush numbers. They don't blitz much. They're generating pressure over 51% of defensive snaps, which is the best in college football. Now, what offensive lines have they seen? The best 2 offenses they've played are South Carolina, whose offensive line hasn't been that great this year, and Kansas. So, yeah, they're pressuring the quarterback at a crazy high rate. They're doing so against some weaker offensive lines, but still, that's your path right there. Missouri's defense, they've been generating pressure without blitzing, generating a lot of pressure without blitzing, and Ty Simpson has a tendency to hold on to the football. So you like that. If you're betting Missouri, you're expecting this pass rush to disrupt what Alabama's been trying to do offensively. And Alabama really hasn't had much of a run game this year. I mean, now that Jam Miller's back, maybe it starts to get going, but Alabama hasn't been running the ball efficiently for pretty much this entire season. So, I mean, there is a path there. If you're betting Missouri, there is a path. That pass rush has looked really good, and Ty Simpson's been holding on to the ball. This is a road game in a tough environment. Missouri's going to be going crazy. So I can see it. That's a realistic path to Missouri playing a great defensive game here. On the other side of the ball, it's kind of the same story with Missouri. I mean, look how great these numbers look. 5th in success rate, 15th in PPA. That's what I'm saying. I mean, just raw data. Missouri's the best team in college football so far this year. If you don't consider who they played, I mean, these numbers look great. Meanwhile, Alabama's been to Florida State. They've been to Georgia. They saw Vanderbilt. I mean, we're looking at Alabama's defensive numbers. They've been through the gauntlet. So who knows what the matchup between these 2 units really looks like. Got to consider strength of schedules. Now, Alabama's dealing with some injuries. They've got Quay Russo's out for the season. I believe that's an edge rusher. I actually think they're missing 2 linebackers and a defensive lineman. So Alabama's defense is definitely dealing with some injuries right now. When you're looking at Missouri's offensive game logs, again, look at the teams. I mean, Kansas, we were praising Missouri's defense for playing a good game against Kansas offense. Well, Kansas defense isn't any good, so the Missouri offense doesn't get the same respect. South Carolina, that's a respectable defense. They're not as good as Alabama, though. So it just comes down to whether or not we believe in these numbers, and it's a little concerning that Bo Pribula, who's putting up video game numbers so far this year, his toughest test was Week 4 at home against South Carolina. He didn't play that well. I mean, it was a big win for Missouri, but Bo Pribula didn't look nearly the same against a tough SEC defense. So, yeah, it's a little concerning. If you're back in the Missouri offense in this one, you're looking for the run game. You're looking for Ahmad Hardy. He's got 730 rushing yards already this season. Alabama has been a little vulnerable to the run. They're injured in the front 7, so there's a path. Missouri can run the football. They've got a running back that looks strong, like I said. So, yeah, I mean, there's a path for Missouri to beat this Alabama team on both sides of the ball. The strength of schedule is an issue. What I'm looking at, and this is why my pick for this game will be Missouri +3, is the scheduling spot for Alabama. Like I said before, if there was ever a time for Missouri to knock this Alabama team off, it's right here. Look where this game falls for Alabama. There are 2 games before this. Now, keep in mind, there's no bye week in here. This is all consecutive, no bye week. They're at Georgia in Athens for the rivalry game against Georgia. They followed up by immediately coming home and playing Vanderbilt, which was the big revenge game. Vanderbilt beat them last year. So back-to-back huge games for Alabama. No time off. They travel again. They go to Missouri. Right after Missouri, they got their big rivalry game against Tennessee. So of these 4, with no bye week in there, this is by far the least important game for Alabama. Now, it's a road SEC game. There are no unimportant games. But of these 4, This will be the one that's not circled for Alabama. Meanwhile, Missouri's been playing a bunch of cake games. They had the border war against Kansas. I think that was in week 2. Other than that, they've just been waiting for this one. This one is circled for Missouri. They're coming off a bye week. So if there was ever a time for Missouri to knock Alabama off, it's right here. In fact, if Missouri doesn't beat Alabama in this one, I'm convinced they'll never beat Alabama. This is the best time. So this is it. This is it, Missouri. This is your time to beat Alabama. Give me Missouri +3. I haven't bet it, but I might be down to. Ohio State, Illinois. We were up at 16. Action was coming in on the Illinois side for a few days, but then Ohio State got hit, it looks like, at the flat 14. We're now at 14.5. Ohio State, Illinois. So Illinois has grabbed back-to-back conference wins. They've bounced back from that Indiana game. Wow. Indiana beat them 63-10, and that loss was so dramatic that I think a lot of people have written this Illinois team off. Remember, coming into the season, Illinois, there was a lot of hype surrounding Illinois. And I think after that game, everyone's like, Illinois is fraudulent. But the truth is, they're right in the mix. And if they can figure out a way to win this game, Illinois is right there. Man, they'll be right in the Big Ten championship talk. So the Illinois season definitely not over yet, despite getting beaten 63-10. The problem is, despite winning back-to-back conference games, I just don't know if I could trust this defense. They're 124th in success rate, 111th in PPA. So on paper, this doesn't look like a good matchup against the Ohio State offense. Now, if you are trying to poke holes in the Ohio State offense, you can say, hey, the offense looks great, but we've only seen this Ohio State team go on the road once. It was to Washington, and the offense didn't look all that great. I know you might be looking at this graphic saying, well, Kyle, these numbers still look pretty good. Yeah, those are pretty good, but we're talking about laying more than 2 touchdowns in a road conference game. I'm going to need better than pretty good. I'm going to need more than 24 points to cover a 14.5-point line. So you can poke holes in the Buckeyes offense by saying the only time we've seen them go on the road, they didn't look all that great. Well, they look good. They didn't look excellent offensively. I think we can all agree Ohio State's probably going to score in this one. Illinois' defense has really struggled, but they are healthier. They were dealing with a lot of injuries in the secondary. I'm pretty sure everyone is back except for Xavier Scott, their main corner there. I think he's out for the year. But I think all the other starters in the secondary who were banged up are now back. So maybe Illinois can string together a good defensive game here. The question comes on the other side of the ball. Is Luke Altmaier able to make throws in this game against the Ohio State defense? Now, you look at this graphic, it would look like probably not. Ohio State, 12th in success rate, 3rd in PPA. Again, we've only seen one road game, so it's tough to go on the road and play. But, it's Ohio State. I think we can all agree that this defense is probably as good as the numbers show. Now, when it comes to Luke Altmaier, if you're trying to fade Illinois, you point at the Indiana game. And you say, hey, when Illinois saw elite defensive competition, he didn't play that well. In fact, he was in prison. He was pressured on 50% of his dropbacks in that game. So you can point at that game and say, hey, this is what Luke Altmaier looks like. This is what the Illinois offense looks like when they play an elite defense. But you can also say, if you're trying to back Illinois, well, that game was on the road, and if you take out that one data point, he's been pretty excellent this year. He's averaging over 285 passing yards per game in his other 5. When he's gotten a clean pocket, he's taken advantage of it. He's been very good from a clean pocket. And keep in mind, Ohio State's defense might be missing one of their main edge rushers there, Kenyatta Jackson Jr. He left the Minnesota game injured with a stinger, I believe. He's listed as questionable. So Ohio State might be missing an edge rusher. Personally, I think this number is slightly too big. I think this should be 12.5, 13. This is the season for Illinois. I think we're letting one data point where they got smoked by Indiana distract us from the fact that coming into the year, we thought Illinois would be pretty good. This is their Super Bowl. If they lose, their season's probably over. If they win, they're right on track to be in the mix for the Big Ten championship. This is the Super Bowl for Illinois. 14.5 is too many. Give me Luke Altmaier plus 14.5. Houston, Oklahoma State. This one was at 2 touchdowns. Action seems to be coming in pretty one-sided, all on the Houston side. We're now up to a 16. Houston, Oklahoma State. This Oklahoma State team is terrible. No other way to slice it. They fired Mike Gundy. They're basically dealing with a shell of a football team right now. To be honest, it makes me sick to even consider laying 2 touchdowns on the road with Houston, but as far as Power 4 programs, Oklahoma State is definitely rock bottom right now. This is not a good time to be an Oklahoma State fan. I think this Houston offense is terrible, but this actually might be a game where Houston could put some points up. Connor Wegman should be good to go, by the way. He cleared concussion protocol, so he's going to be playing in this one. I don't trust him at all, but Oklahoma State doesn't have a pass rush, so he should have time to throw. He's actually been all right when given a clean pocket. I mean, Oklahoma State can't stop the run either, so he's going to have run support. It should be a very favorable matchup for Connor Wegman. On the other side of the ball, I mean, I have no idea how Oklahoma State's going to move the chains in this one. Keep in mind, Zane Flores is hurt and not playing in this game. That's Oklahoma State's quarterback, and that's not even the starter. The starting quarterback's been out all year, so Zane Flores was actually the backup quarterback. Now he's hurt. So I don't even know who's playing quarterback for Oklahoma State in this one. I guess Sam Jackson, the fifth. I don't even know who's playing quarterback for Oklahoma State. And Houston's defense has actually been respectable. So, yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it would be Houston minus 14.5. Oklahoma State's terrible. Old Dominion Marshall. This is another one that's kind of bouncing back and forth. It looks like Old Dominion's taking money at 14. Marshall's taking money at 14.5. Old Dominion Marshall. This ODU Monarchs team. What a wagon. This was my pick too. This was my pick to win the Sun Belt Conference. Obviously, when you talk about a sport like college football, this applies to any sport, by the way. And in the offseason, you make predictions. You're going to be wrong a ton. You're going to be right a ton. I was right about this one. I mean, Old Dominion looks like the real deal. They are just routing teams, including Virginia Tech and Blacksburg, Liberty by 2 touchdowns, Coastal Carolina by 150. This Old Dominion team is an absolute wagon. Now they're matched up against a Marshall team that really isn't that great. Do want to give Marshall a little bit of credit, though. They've been playing some tough defense, which was honestly expected. If you don't know anything about Marshall football, their new head coach, well, they won the Sun Belt last year. Their head coach pieced and took the Southern Miss job, won the conference championship, and then left. Their new head coach is Tony Gibson. He's been the defensive coordinator at NC State the last 6 or 7 years. And NC State always has a tough defensive front, or always had a tough defensive front while he was there. So coming into this one, Marshall's a program that usually has a strong defense. They brought in a head coach that gave us a strong defensive front, a physical defense at NC State every single year. So coming into the year, yeah, this Marshall team didn't have a ton of talent, but I think most of us thought Tony Gibson's going to figure out a way to put a good defense on the field. And they've been pretty strong defensively. They deserve some credit. The problem is, if you take a look at their schedule, I mean, they got lit up by Georgia. Okay, understandable. Missouri State lit them up in week 2. Since then, they've been playing some better defense. Who have they seen? Eastern Kentucky, that's an FCS program. Middle Tennessee, that program is an embarrassment. We just watched that the other night. That was embarrassing. Middle Tennessee, the way they lost that game to Missouri State. And then they played Louisiana Lafayette, who, by the way, I think is on their 3rd-string quarterback now. That team's terrible. So, okay, they've been playing some solid defense the last few games. Haven't played a single decent offense. We've specifically seen Marshall's defense struggle with explosive plays. If you haven't watched Old Dominion play football this year, their quarterback is Colton Joseph. I mean, he's an athlete. He can throw the ball deep. He's an explosive play machine. The kid's a monster. I've actually heard some college football people say they expect Colton Joseph to be transferring to a big-time program like Florida next year. So Colton Joseph, the Old Dominion quarterback, remember that name. He's the real deal. Now, on the other side of the ball, I suppose if you're trying to take the big number with Marshall, you can say Marshall can run the football here. I know this graphic doesn't really show it, but they have been running the ball pretty efficiently in their last 4 games. Over 222 rushing yards per game, over 4.8 yards per carry, over 46% success rate per rush. I mean, but again, against who? Missouri State, Eastern Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, Louisiana. Those are some really bad defenses. They've also been dealing with a couple injuries on this side of the ball. They lost their starting right guard and their main running back earlier in the season. We haven't really noticed it yet because they haven't played anybody. I think they'll notice it in this one against this Old Dominion defense. I know their numbers against the run don't look amazing on the year, but if you actually take a look, they got run on twice. They were both road games against Power 4 opponents. Okay, Old Dominion, you got run on by Indiana in Indiana, and you got run on by Virginia Tech in Virginia Tech, a game you won by 20. Yeah, this Old Dominion defensive front is usually pretty strong under Ricky Ronnie, so yeah, Old Dominion should roll them. I don't see any reason to step in front of the ODU train. This team's an absolute wagon. What's it at now? Was it 14.5? Yeah, Old Dominion minus 20 plus. Northwestern, Penn State. Not a ton of analysis for this one. I think poor Northwestern is about to feel the wrath of an extremely pissed off Penn State team. This is a team that had national championship aspirations, as I'm sure you've heard. And as I'm sure you've heard, the last couple of weeks have not gone well for Penn State. The loss to Oregon and then the loss to Nico and UCLA. Back-to-back losses for Penn State. Now, I know you look at this graphic here and you might think, based on the numbers on the screen, you might think, hey, Northwestern might be able to move the ball a little bit on this Penn State defense. No, I very seriously doubt that. No, Penn State did just lose a key linebacker, Tony Rojas, their linebacker. He's one of the team's leading tacklers. He's out for the season. So Penn State did just take a huge loss here in terms of losing one of their main linebackers there. But keep in mind, when we're looking at Penn State's season-long defensive numbers, nobody was moving the ball on this team before 2 weeks ago. Their first 3 games, they were allowing 5.7 points per game. It's the last 2 games. That's where we saw Penn State's defense looking a little vulnerable. One of them was against Oregon, who might be the top 3 or 4 offense in the country. And the other one was against UCLA, where Nico was doing Heisman Trophy stuff in that game. I mean, Preston Stone's not going to do that. So I still think this Penn's defense is very much elite, even with the injured linebacker. Now, I do want to give Northwestern's offense a little bit of credit. They actually have looked pretty good. In their last 2 games, they're averaging 29.5 points per game, over 46% success rate, over 6.3 yards per play. So they are trending in the right direction offensively, but on the road in Happy Valley, this just ain't the spot for Northwestern. Preston Stone's been terrible under pressure this year. Terrible. A 20.8 QB rating when pressured. It's on the road in Happy Valley. That pass rush is coming. This is kind of a nightmare spot for Northwestern offensively. Now, on the other side of the ball, you might say, well, Kyle, Penn State's offense looks terrible. And I agree, it looks a little shaky, but this Northwestern defense has been terrible against the run all year. Now, they might be getting their safety, Damon Walters, back, he's probably the best player on that Northwestern defense. He hasn't played all year. So maybe getting probably their star defender there, that safety back, would help. But, I mean, Northwestern's really struggled against the run. Penn State has 2 of the best running backs in the country. I think this is a beatdown. Lay it, Penn State. Iowa State, Colorado. If you were on this one early, you could have got Colorado at 5.5. This chart starts at 3.5. Then it got bought down to a flat 3. Pretty much where it's sitting now at 30K limits. Iowa State, Colorado. So this Iowa State team took a gut punch a couple weeks ago. They lost both their starting corners for the season. Both their starting corners. So last week, they played their first game without both their corners. And it was noticeable because Cincinnati's offense looked really good. They lost 38-30. Cincinnati was in control of this game start to finish. Brendan Sorsby was piecing Iowa State's secondary up. Cincinnati's offense basically did whatever they wanted for most of this game against Iowa State. So the initial movement buying this number down, there were Colorado's +5s and 5.5s. I agree with the initial movement buying this Colorado number down. Here's the thing. It's gone too far now. I mean, last week, yes, Iowa State's defense looked terrible. That secondary is definitely vulnerable. That was on the road against Cincinnati, who, by the way, is looking like they might have one of the most explosive offenses in the Big 12. Now they're playing Colorado, who, I mean, can Colorado throw the ball? They don't have much of a passing attack here in Boulder. They're 81st in success rate per dropback, 75th in PPA per dropback. Do we really think Salter is the guy to exploit these missing corners? He lost his starting job, then got it back. I mean, hasn't looked good at all in terms of throwing the ball. He's a decent athlete, but in terms of throwing the ball, Colorado hasn't shown us much. They're also injured. They're missing receivers here. Draylon Miller got hurt in the TCU game. Isaiah Harge got hurt in the TCU game. Hakeem Williams has been out for several weeks. They're missing 3 of their top 5 or 6 receivers here at Colorado. So with Salter at quarterback, very thin at wide receiver, is Colorado the offense to exploit an injured secondary? Now, I think Iowa State might also be missing a safety in this game. So, I mean, their secondary is definitely injured, but Colorado just isn't the team to exploit that. Colorado's going to try to run the ball in this game. I mean, I still trust Iowa State's run defense. So, I mean, Colorado's just not the right offense to exploit where Iowa State is lacking right now. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Colorado's defense is not nearly as good as it was last year. They lost a lot of pieces on that defense from the 2024 team, and they just took 2 key losses last week in the TCU game. They lost 2 starters, their edge rusher Arden Walker and their safety Carter Steinemeyer, both injured last week, both out. So they're missing 2 key starters on the defensive side of the ball. The bright spot for this Colorado defense so far this year has been the pass rush, and they have some playmakers in the secondary. They're missing an edge rusher and a safety, and in addition to that, I mean, this is still a tough matchup for them Rocco Beck's a guy who gets the ball out quickly. He's actually handled pressure really well. So even if they were healthy, this would be a tough matchup for the Colorado defense. And in addition to that, Colorado's got a couple of playmakers in the secondary. They've got an NFL caliber player at corner. Well, Iowa State, this is not 2024 Iowa State that has those two NFL wide receivers. This year's Iowa State offense is centered around the tight ends. 2 of the 3 leaders of the team in receptions are tight ends. So the way this Iowa State offense is built, Rocco Beck gets the ball out quickly. He handles pressure well. So it kind of neutralizes the pass rush. And in terms of the corners there for Colorado, Iowa State doesn't use the wide receivers as much. So I hate this matchup for the Colorado defense. This number has fallen way too far. I was actually considering Colorado when I first saw it at the 5. I grabbed Iowa State at 2.5. I bet this. I'm on the clones here. Iowa State minus 2.5. Nebraska, Maryland. So I'm surprised by this one. This one got down to a 4.5, 5. This chart starts at 5.5. They were taking action on the Nebraska side. Looks like Maryland did get hit the 7, but then it dropped down to 6.5, and Nebraska got hit again. So at the time of recording, we're sitting at a flat 7 again. Nebraska, Maryland. Let's talk some Terps ball. We all know the criticism of this Maryland team. It's that these defensive numbers are fake, right? We were just talking about it last week before the Washington game. They're 11th in success rate, 6th in PPA. That's what everyone's saying. They've played a weak schedule. Their defensive numbers are fake. And look, I know what happened at the end of that Terps game. They still covered for me. But yeah, they blew a 20-0 lead. That's a little unforgivable. Loxley needed to have that one, man. And he blew a 20-0 lead to Washington. This was Washington flying across the country. Maryland was coming off a bye week. It was a very favorable position for the Terps. I mean, Maryland, you got to have that one. Now they were underdogs. I think they closed it 4.5 point underdogs or something. So it's not a game they technically were supposed to win. That was a very winnable football game. They were up 20, blew a 20-0 lead. So I guess we're looking at their defensive numbers from week 6, and we're thinking this is a negative data point. But they played solid defense for most of that game. Washington marched down and scored 3 consecutive touchdowns in the fourth quarter unanswered to win. So I guess people are out on this Maryland defense, and we're thinking Nebraska's offense is just going to steamroll them. But keep in mind, this Nebraska offense really hasn't looked great. I mean, if you isolate their numbers to just their Power 4 games, Cincinnati, Michigan, Michigan State. Of those 3 teams, I would say Michigan's the only defense I would consider to be a threat. Cincinnati's defense is a little better than we expected, but it's not an elite defense. Michigan State certainly doesn't have an elite defense. In those games, they're averaging less than 5 yards per play. So I know Nebraska's year-long numbers look pretty great offensively, but they haven't looked all that great when they saw real competition, and this is a road conference game. So I personally think Maryland's defense is going to be able to generate some stops in this game. Maybe they're not as good as their season-long numbers show, but I don't think this is a bad defense at all, and they played well for most of that Washington game. Now, on the other side of the ball, I do understand why people are saying this is a tough matchup for Maryland's offense. Obviously, some sharp money has come in on the Nebraska side, and I think what they're probably looking at is the fact that this Nebraska defense, it's the complete opposite of last year's Nebraska defense. If you followed along with Big Ten football last year, Nebraska was elite against the run. Their secondary was a little bit vulnerable. That was last year's defense. Well, they lost most of those pieces in the defensive front 7. They're actually struggling against the run in the big games. The secondary seems to be the strength of this Nebraska defense now. They're actually weak against the run. Why am I bringing this up? Because Maryland's offense hasn't had much of a run game. That seems to be the weakness of this Nebraska defense this year, and Maryland hasn't consistently run the ball at all. They haven't even seen the toughest competition, and they're still struggling to run the ball. Maryland's offense has been one superstar player, Malik Washington, at quarterback. So maybe they're looking at this. Maybe they're looking at Nebraska's defensive game logs, and they're thinking this is a tough matchup for Maryland offensively because they're not getting thrown on. And look, some credit to Nebraska's defense. It's not like they haven't seen quarterbacks either. They've seen Brendan Sorsby, who, by the way, is looking like he might be the best quarterback in the Big 12, which is crazy. They've seen Bryce Underwood. They've seen Aiden Childs. I mean, these might not be Heisman Trophy candidates, but these are quarterbacks that can play. Malik Washington did just have his first shaky game. He wasn't even under a ton of pressure in that Washington game, and it was a favorable spot against a Washington defense that flew across the country. So I get it. At first, I was like, what is this sharp money coming in on the Nebraska side? But I looked into it a little deeper. I do understand it a little bit. Despite all that, I still do not think Nebraska is this much better than Maryland. We're saying Nebraska is 8.5 points better than Maryland on a neutral. Man, this Terps team looks pretty strong, and Malik Washington's the real deal. Terps came through for me last week. They blew the lead, but they still covered. Going right back to them. Maryland plus 6.5. I bet this one. Market. It looked great. It got bet all the way down to like 4. Now it's bet back up, but I don't care. Terps, keep it close for me. TCU Kansas State, they seem pretty comfortable in this one. We finally did see some movement when they raised limits to 30K. Was at 1.5. It's now at 2. TCU Kansas State, we should start out by pointing out this BS cover. Look, I picked TCU minus 13.5 on the show, so this didn't affect me. But if you had Colorado plus 13.5, that's a tough one, man. For those of you that didn't see the end of this game, TCU had the ball up a touchdown, 4th and 6 with 19 seconds left. 19 seconds left, and they threw a 21-yard touchdown pass. Now, I completely understand why you go for it. You line up to try to kick a field goal. If it gets blocked, I mean, you could blow the lead and lose the game. So going for it is probably the move. It's just unlucky that it happened to go for a touchdown. They were only up 7 and ended up covering minus 13.5 because they scored with 19 seconds left. There was enough time to kick the PAT as well. Tough beat if you were on Colorado plus 13.5 here. But anyway, let's talk about this matchup. We got TCU on the road against Kansas State. Kansas State's offense. I guess the question we have to ask is, are they back? Because we were all collectively laughing at this Kansas State offense the first few games of the season. Avery Johnson, everyone was talking about it. They go into the bye week. Since they come out of the bye week, they've been looking better. So we're looking at the season-long numbers here. 93rd in success rate, 79th in PPA. Look pretty shitty for the Kansas State offense. But if we isolate it to just the 2 games we've seen since the bye week, they're averaging 34 points per game, 6.3 yards per play, success rate over 45%. So, okay, if you're a Kansas State fan, you love to see this. The offense is looking significantly better since the bye week. They're also healthier. Jace Brown, their main wide receiver, he ended up playing last week. He was listed as questionable. And Jerron Bradley, that's their big 6'5" transfer portal receiver. He's missed the last 3 or 4 games. He even saw a few snaps. So it didn't look like he was 100% yet. But the fact that he was suited up on the field, that's a good sign. So their 2 main receivers who were both banged up, looks like they're both back. Now, Dylan Edwards, he's listed as questionable for this game, but kind of feel like he's been listed as questionable for almost every single game this season. So some questions with Dylan Edwards, their playmaking running back there. So Kansas State offensively has looked pretty strong since the bye week. That being said, we do have to consider the competition. Those 2 games were against UCF and Baylor, 2 of the weaker defenses in the conference. So that's something we have to consider. This TCU defense is definitely better than Baylor's or UCF's. And the problem I see for Kansas State's offense in this matchup is Kansas State wants to run the ball. They do not want to drop Avery Johnson back to pass 40 times. That's not what Chris Kleiman wants to do. That is not the offense they want to run. And TCU's defense, it's not only is it better than the 2 defenses they just saw, but they've been really strong against the run this year. In their first 5 games, they're allowing under 3.7 yards per carry, 36% success rate per rush. So TCU's defensive front 7 has been really strong. The weakness of this TCU defense has been the secondary. They've struggled to defend the pass, but is Avery Johnson really the quarterback? I'm not saying Avery Johnson, he certainly looks better, but is he really the guy that's going to pick apart a vulnerable secondary, especially if he doesn't have run support? Just don't think that's a great matchup for Kansas State. Now, again, I want to give Avery Johnson some credit. He has looked better in the last 2 games. He's been making some throws, 256 passing yards per game, taking advantage of having a clean pocket. It was against weaker defenses, but he certainly looks way better than he did earlier in the season. I just don't know if I trust him against this TCU defense that's probably good enough to take away the run. Is he able to keep up with this TCU offense that we're sure this TCU offense is going to score? They did just lose their left tackle, Ryan Hughes. He was injured in the Colorado game. He's out for the season. So a big blow to the TCU offense. They just lost their left tackle. Also, it's supposed to be really windy in this game, which is kind of a weird spin on it because TCU is an offense that likes to throw the ball, but they're also a great run defense, so I'm not even sure who that helps. A lot of moving pieces in this game. I personally think TCU is the much stronger team. Laying 1.5 on the road, I would lean towards the TCU side. The wind and the injury to the left tackle is going to keep me off, but I think TCU wins this game, so give me TCU minus 1.5. Indiana, Oregon, this one was at 8.5. So far, the early action's been coming in all on the Indiana side. We're now down to a flat 7 at 30K limits. Indiana, Oregon, and Eugene. Huge Big Ten game here. We got both these teams coming off a bye week, and both these teams also coming off a huge road win. Indiana obviously pulls off the upset in Kinnick. Well, no, they were favored. It wasn't an upset. But they pull off the win in Kinnick. Oregon did pull off the upset on the road in Happy Valley against Penn State. And it's crazy how, if you rewind 2 weeks ago, you would say Oregon, if they win this game, 3.5-point dogs to Penn State in Happy Valley, this would be such a huge win. And Indiana was a touchdown favorite. They were more expected to win. But fast forward a couple weeks, looking back at it now, I'm kind of thinking the Indiana win at Kinnick might have been a little bit more impressive. I think we've seen enough of a sample size where, this Penn State offense might not be very good. It doesn't look right at all. We've seen them struggle to move the ball on FIU. We've seen they didn't even start moving the ball on UCLA until they were down 24-0. So Oregon's win over Penn State certainly looks less impressive as we progress through the season. And I was pretty impressed with that Indiana game. I was on Iowa plus 9.5, so I did cash my bet. But Indiana looked pretty, I don't want to say strong, because Iowa's defense was giving them problems, but I like the way Mendoza handled himself. I mean, he didn't handle the pressure all that well, but he took the throws that were there when he was given a clean pocket. He took advantage of it, had a great QB rating from a clean pocket. I like that. Obviously, he threw the touchdown pass to win the game there, too. Oregon's pass rush is obviously going to be a problem, but if you take a look, Oregon's secondary hasn't been tested at all. And remember, Oregon's 2 starting corners are freshmen. They have 2 freshmen starting at corner. Now, it's Oregon. I'm sure they're superstars, but they have some injuries to the depth of the secondary, and their 2 starters at corner are freshmen. They haven't been tested. Who's the best passing attack that Oregon has seen so far this year? Penn State with Drew Aller. This secondary hasn't been tested, and I think Mendoza and this Indiana offense with that receiver they got there, Surratt, they can test it. Mendoza has also done a great job handling pressure so far this year. I think Indiana can move the ball in this game. I do. And I even think Mendoza will have some run support. Last week, 2 weeks ago, they went on the road to Kinnick. There might not be a tougher spot in the country to go run the ball than Kinnick. Maybe a handful of places to go run the football than to go into Iowa and run the ball in the Hawkeyes defense. 4.37 yards per carry. It wasn't crazy, and I'm not expecting it to be crazy here. But Oregon's defense, their defensive front, not nearly as tough as the Notre Dame defensive front they saw last year in the college football playoff, or the Ohio State defensive front they saw last year in the regular season. Those are the only 2 times where we've really seen the Cignetti offense look stifled, is those 2 games from last year, and then the Iowa game a couple weeks ago, which they still won. So I think Indiana can move the ball in this game. The question comes on the other side of the football. Are they capable of making stops here? And this is tough. I would say on the road in Eugene, it's tough to imagine Oregon's offense getting stopped in this building. It's kind of tough to envision. Obviously, looking at this graphic, we're seeing a lot of green here between Indiana's defense and Oregon's offense. But good news for Indiana, they're getting their best cornerback. D'Angelo Pons confirmed he's back at practice. He will be back for this game, which is huge. And Indiana's defense, they kind of got off to a rocky start there against Old Dominion. They won the game by 2 touchdowns, but they were getting run on a little bit. Colton Joseph made a couple of big plays. Number 1, it turns out Old Dominion's a wagon. And number 2, since that day, they've been rock solid defensively. They're allowing 8.5 points per game, under 3.6 yards per play. Now, they haven't seen a team like Oregon or even close, but they saw Illinois. Illinois' got a quarterback that can throw the ball. That offense has been pretty good. Illinois' problem has been their defense. Now, don't get me wrong. This Oregon offense looks like an absolute powerhouse. I'm actually really impressed with how they look with Dante Moore. Dante Moore looks like a completely different quarterback than when we saw with UCLA. He looks so much more polished. So I'm not overlooking this Oregon offense at all. This Indiana defense has been great. I'm not expecting him to go into Eugene and slow this offense down. They just went into Happy Valley and hung 30. So, yes, I expect Oregon's offense to move the ball and score. But when it comes down to it, the question is, can you really see this Cignetti Indiana team getting blown out or losing by 2 touchdowns? And we've only seen that twice. On the road at Columbus last year, on the road at South Bend last year. What do those 2 teams have in common? They played in the national championship. They were the 2 most physical defensive fronts in the country. Oregon's an elite team, an elite program. I don't think they have that physical defensive front that the 2024 Ohio State team had or the 2024 Notre Dame team had. So I think Indiana can go toe-to-toe with this Oregon team. I think they're going to play them down to the last possession. I'm on Indiana at plus 8.5. I believe it's at 7.5 now. Oklahoma, Texas. At the time of recording, we're only at 5K limits. I'm assuming they're trying to limit exposure if someone has insider information on the tier. But this one was at Oklahoma plus 3. I actually got Oklahoma at plus 3.5. So some of the softer books had 3.5s open. It's been moving pretty consistently towards Oklahoma. At the time of recording, Oklahoma is laying a point. Oklahoma, Texas, possibly the game of the week here. Red River rivalry. So we all know what happened last week. Arch Manning goes on the road to the Swamp. Didn't end well. Final score was 29-21. That's a one-score game, but honestly, Florida was in control of that game start to finish. Texas takes their second loss of the season. San Jose State remains the Longhorns' best win this year. So, yeah, not a great showing for Texas. And Arch Manning was in absolute prison in this game. He was pressured on over 59% of his dropbacks. 59%. There were actually only 2 quarterbacks in the entire FBS that were pressured more than Arch Manning last week in the Swamp. So, I get it. There's not a lot of positivity surrounding Arch Manning in the Texas offense right now. In addition to the prison he was in terms of the pressure, he also had no run support. Last week at Florida, 52 yards rushing, 26.3% success rate per rush, 2 yards per carry. So it was a terrible showing for the Texas offense. Arch Manning was not put in a good situation at all. And at first glance, you're thinking, how can we count on this Texas offense to do anything against Oklahoma? Because there's a lot of people, including myself, that would make a case for Oklahoma being the best defense in the country. I've said that. I believe I've said this is the best defensive line in the country, is what I believe I said. So how could we possibly make a case for Texas moving the ball against this Oklahoma defense? Well, the more I looked at it, the more I actually think Texas might play a decent game offensively. So obviously you look at the numbers and this looks terrible. Oklahoma's first in success rate, first in PPA defensively so far this year. The one thing I was looking at that really swung me over to the Texas side, spoiler alert, I actually middled this game. I have Oklahoma plus 3.5 and Texas money line at a pick. There you go. Those are my picks for the game. We'll get to it, though. So I was looking at this game, and the first thing that jumped out at me is Texas has been on the road in brutal situations here at Columbus, at the Swamp. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's been playing the entire season at home. Their only road game was at Temple, and yeah, they dominated, but it was at Temple in Philadelphia. Who cares? So in terms of body of work, I mean, Texas has been through the gauntlet. Oklahoma hasn't. And when we're talking about that matchup, because I feel like that's the headline, it's Oklahoma's defense against Arch Manning, who looks terrible. How is Arch Manning in the Texas offense possibly going to move the ball against this Oklahoma defense? Well, the thing is, with college football especially, we base our opinions based on games we watch. And what games did we watch? What Texas games did we watch this year? At Columbus against Ohio State in the opener, and at the Swamp. 2 insane spots for a quarterback to go play. I mean, at Columbus might be the toughest place in the country right now to go score points. And at the Swamp, I mean, Florida's offense certainly deserves some criticism. The defense has been excellent this year. 2 of the toughest places to go play and score points if you're an offense. What big games did we watch from Oklahoma's defense this year? Both were at home against Michigan and Auburn. Those are the 2 big games that we watched. Home against Michigan, home against Auburn. So we're all sitting here anointing the Oklahoma defense, myself included. I've talked them up. There are 2 big games where a home game against Michigan, who had a freshman quarterback making his first career road start, and then a home game against Auburn, who, I mean, doesn't have the most explosive offense. Auburn's a good team. That's a good win. But in terms of the Oklahoma defense, they're not battle-tested at all. Their 2 big games were at home against lackluster offenses or a freshman quarterback. Meanwhile, we're crucifying Arch Manning, like throwing him to the wolves. And granted, he doesn't look good. I'm not going to bat for him. I'm just saying we're crucifying the Texas offense. This offense is terrible. Arch Manning is terrible because of the 2 big games we watched. They were in Columbus and the Swamp. It's just not apples to apples in terms of body of work there when we're talking about the Oklahoma defense against the Texas offense. I think everyone's looking at this one, think it's just going to be an annihilation. Texas isn't going to do anything. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas is able to move the ball a little bit in this one. And I know that sounds crazy. I think Texas is going to move the ball a little bit in this game. Now we get to the other side, the Oklahoma offense against the Texas defense. And I feel not enough people are talking about this matchup because if John Mateer doesn't play, and personally, I don't believe he's going to, Even if he does play, I very seriously doubt he's at 100%. He had surgery, 16, 17 days ago? He just had surgery. So even if he does play, I personally think they're just playing around with the injury report to just throw some indifference into Texas in terms of a defensive game plan. I don't think he's going to play. But even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. So if John Mateer doesn't play, what evidence do we have? Serious question. What evidence do we have that Oklahoma can move the football in this game? Because I think the answer to that is none. Zero. Let's not forget that last year we saw Michael Hawkins start 3 games. They averaged 15 points per game, success rate under 33%, 4.1 yards per play. This offense was absolutely brutal. It was terrible. One of those games was against Texas, by the way. The final score was 34-3. They did nothing in the game. Now, you might be saying, oh, Kyle, that was last year's Oklahoma offense. That's fair. And I've also heard from people that Hawkins looks a lot better. He looked a lot better in camp. So maybe Hawkins has improved as well. I get that. I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying, what evidence do we have that Oklahoma can move the ball in this Texas defense? Guys, Oklahoma's offense has not looked very good so far this year. If we're looking at those 2 big games against Michigan and Auburn, 5.3 yards per play, success rate at 44%. And if you watch those games, which I'm sure most of you did, every single Oklahoma offensive play was Mateer doing something Heisman-like him flushed out of the pocket, making a throw on the run, or him using his legs to convert on a big 3rd and 9. It was all Mateer. This Oklahoma offense doesn't look good. They can't run the ball. They're not getting any support from the running back position. In my opinion, I'm not trying to be too hot take-ish. I think this Oklahoma offense is very similar, maybe a little bit better, but very similar to last year's Oklahoma offense. The difference is they just have a superstar at quarterback. And if he doesn't play, I'm not sure how Oklahoma moves the ball. So I know it's crazy. I originally took Oklahoma plus 3.5 at open. So I do have an Oklahoma plus 3.5 ticket, but I played back strong on Texas at a pick. So I actually have 3 units on this game. I'm on Texas money line at a pick at 2 units, and I'm on Oklahoma plus 3.5. So wow, if Texas wins by 3 or less, man, this will be a big one for me. So yeah, hook 'em. I'm on the horns. Iowa, Wisconsin. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this game. We might be seeing 2 backup quarterbacks here. The only reason I'm including it in the video is I did place a bet on it. Now, I think there's a chance Gronowski plays for Iowa, and if he does, maybe my bet's a little bit screwed. But as of right now, it's looking like we might see 2 backups. Even if Gronowski plays, though, it's not like Iowa's offense has looked good. It's looked shaky all year, and the Wisconsin defense is way better than these numbers show. This makes it look like Wisconsin's having a down year defensively. That defense is strong. So even if Gronowski plays, which there's a chance he doesn't even play, but even if Gronowski plays, I wouldn't trust this Iowa offense to move the ball on the road in Madison. And on the other side of the ball, look, I'm not trying to make a case for Wisconsin's offense to move the ball on Iowa's defense. That offense is actually terrible. But that kid Simmons, Hunter Simmons, the new quarterback, he looks all right. And his first start with the team was on the road in the Big House. He actually looked better than what they were getting from O'Neal. So I actually think he's an upgrade at quarterback. And his first start was on the road at Michigan. He looked all right. Now, yes, he's playing Iowa's defense. It's a nightmare spot. But his first start was on the road in the Big House. So the fact that he's home against Iowa might actually be a step down in terms of the spot for Simmons. So I actually thought he looked all right. This game should not be more than a field goal. I got Wisconsin at +5. But if you could still get 3.5, I think we're going to see an old school Big Ten West game here, like a 19-17 final score. So if you can get more than a field goal with Wisconsin, I would still do it. I'm on 5, but I would still do it at over a field goal. Florida, Texas A&M. This one was at 7.5, then dropped down to 7, then back to 7.5. Got as high as 8, and then it looks like Florida got hit again at 30K limits. We're back to a 7.5. Florida, Texas A&M at Kyle Field. Obviously, Gators coming off a huge win for Billy Napier. Upset Arch Manning at home in the Swamp. 29-21 was the final score, but honestly, they controlled that game start to finish. Great win for Florida there. Offense looked pretty good, which is not something we've said this year. The Florida offense looked pretty good. That is not something we've said. I mean, maybe we cut them a little bit of slack, though. This poor Florida offense had to go back-to-back road games against 2 of the best defenses in the country, at LSU, at Miami. They come back home. They see another great defense in Texas, and they got up for it. And they got their superstar wide receiver on the field, Dallas Wilson. That was one of their most highly touted recruits. He was actually the number 2 wide receiver recruit in the country, second to only DeCorian Moore, that freshman that's killing it for Oregon. So they got their superstar freshman recruit wide receiver out there. He went nuts, too. He had like 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I guess the question is this the start of a positive second half of the season for Florida's offense? And unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think that's very likely. This Texas A&M defense has been missing 2 starters. Safety Bryce Anderson and linebacker Scooby Williams. Hasn't mattered. They've been excellent. I mean, they've had strong teams coming into Kyle Field, and no one's really been able to move the football on them. In their home games so far this year, they've played UTSA, strong offense, Utah State, pretty good offense, Auburn, Mississippi State. They're allowing 16.3 points per game, under 4.2 yards per play. So this defense has been very good at home. Also, Florida got a receiver back. They got their superstar recruit on the field, wide receiver. They might be missing one of their other wide receivers in this game. Eugene Wilson has been added to the injury report, and he might not play. So, no, I don't think the Florida offense continues to roll here at Kyle Field. On the other side of the ball, though, this is where we don't want to overlook Florida. I mean, the offense struggling has kind of stolen the headlines. It's kind of flown under the radar that Florida's played very good defense this year. Their 14th success rate, 29th in PPA. Sometimes when there's a lot of negative media coverage and teams losing, something like this can fly under the radar. I mean, they've been playing very good defense. The thing is, this Texas A&M offense is so loaded, and I don't even think they've been fully flexing their muscles. The final scores of these games have not indicated how efficiently this team has been moving the ball. In the last 3 games, they're averaging 29.3 points per game. Okay, that's pretty good. They're averaging over 6.5 yards per play. So this offense looks excellent, and the final score doesn't really reflect that. I mean, they've got it all. They've got wide receivers. They've got the superstar running back. They've got an elite offensive line. It's a very complete offense. And even though I love this Florida defense, I think it's very strong on the road in Kyle Field. I think Texas A&M is going to score points in this game. So I like Texas A&M in this one. The problem is, if you remember last year, Florida was sitting at 4-5, and we were kind of just writing Billy Napier off. Like, Billy Napier's done. They were sitting at 4-5. They pull off the huge home upset. They were home dogs against LSU. They pull off the win. DJ Lagway plays great. They get the win. They actually won out after that, and that win was kind of the turning point for Florida's season. They didn't lose another game after that. And I'm a little worried that home win against Texas could be that same rallying point. Seems like these players like playing for Billy Napier, so I'm a little worried that home win against Texas is going to spark just a completely different looking Florida team in the second half of the season. Remember, coming into the year, people were saying Florida's a dark horse to win the SEC. There was a lot of hype surrounding this team coming into the season. So I'm a little scared that win over Texas might have been a rallying point. It doesn't change my pick. I think Texas A&M's a wagon. I personally think Texas A&M is one of the best teams in the country, truly top 5 team in the country. So the last couple of final scores don't really indicate how strong Texas A&M has looked. So I think the Aggies win by double digits here. Texas A&M -7.5. Kansas, Texas Tech. This one was at 14.5. It got down to 13.5. Didn't last very long. Texas Tech -13.5 got bought up. Went up to 15, and then Kansas got hit again. So at the time of recording, we're sitting at a flat 14, 20K limits. Kansas, Texas Tech. In my opinion, this is the battle right here. Kansas offense against Texas Tech's defense. Because on the other side of the ball, I mean, it's tough to make an argument for Kansas making stops here on the road in Lubbock. So this is the matchup right here. Texas Tech on paper has been one of the best defenses in the country. 5th in success rate, 5th in PPA. Is Jalen Daniels able to go on the road and move the ball on this Texas Tech defense that's shaping up to it's looking pretty elite up to this point? The issue I have with Texas Tech's defense, and I'm not trying to poke holes in it, the issues I have with it, though, we have one data point. They haven't played anybody other than one game on the road at Rice-Eccles, and they deserve all the credit in the world. They beat the hell out of Utah at Rice-Eccles. Not an easy place to go play. Not only did they win the game, they beat Utah up good. Utah was held to 3.81 yards per play. So, look, Texas Tech looks as good as the hype on the defensive side of the ball. Remember, this is a team that went into the portal, spent $1 billion to assemble a super team on the defensive side of the ball. And up to this point, it's looking like they got their money's worth. I'm just a little concerned that we've only seen one data point. I would like to see them play a second tough game before I start pricing the Texas Tech defense out like it's 2022 Georgia or something. I would like to see a second tough game in there. So this would be a big test for Texas Tech because this Kansas offense is definitely explosive. Now, I will say, and we were talking about this on the live show, They scored 31 points in the Missouri game. That's a little misleading. They had an interception back to the 1-yard line. They had a fumble return touchdown. If you look at the offensive numbers, they actually didn't play that well. 4.61 yards per play, 36.7% success rate. That was on the road at Missouri, an elite SEC defense. Now, some people would say, hey, Texas Tech's defense is on that level. Some people would say, dude, this is the Big 12. You're not going to see a road Big 12 defense on the level of a road SEC defense. It's tough to say. I personally think Jalen Daniels is an NFL caliber talent. Not that I think he's an NFL quarterback. He has moments, though. He has flashes where it's like, okay, this dude's unstoppable. I don't think he'll be intimidated by Lubbock. I think he can make throws here. I think Kansas is able to move the ball in this game. The problem is, on the other side of the ball, I'm not sure if they can make a single stop. They've got some injuries. Linebacker Joseph Sipp Jr., he missed the first few games, finally came back. Now he's out again. They're also missing a corner. This Texas Tech offense is always good at home in Lubbock. The Kansas secondary's been pretty vulnerable all year. Yeah, it's tough to make a case for Kansas making stops in this game. I want to take the big number, plus 14.5. I would lean towards Kansas, lean towards the over here. Rice, UTSA. This is another one that I'm surprised with. So the early action was coming in on UTSA, got all the way up to 12.5. Since then, it's been all Rice money. I mean, it's moved down from 12.5. We're down to a flat 10 now at 10K limits. Rice, UTSA, and this is a tough one for Rice. So on paper, this new look Rice option offense hasn't looked all that efficient. Now, it's not that the season's been a failure or anything. In fact, they've picked up a couple of really nice road wins. So I'd say year one over there for Scott Abel has been pretty good over there at Rice. So by no means am I saying this offense hasn't been good or Rice isn't good, nothing like that. I'm just saying on paper it hasn't been all that efficient. Part of that could be due to the injuries. They've got 3 starters from the offensive line that started in week 1 for Rice. 3 of those pieces are currently injured, and it's uncertain if any of them will return from this game. So this is an option offense that's hobbled on the offensive line. Not a great look there. And UTSA, not exactly known for their defense. In fact, their defense is definitely vulnerable at times. They're more vulnerable against the pass. I mean, they've been strong against the run this year. They were very strong against the run last year. That's the strength of the UTSA defense, is defending the run. Rice runs an option. Now, I do want to give some credit to Chase Jenkins. He's actually been pretty efficient throwing the ball, but we're talking about 12 to 15 pass attempts per game. Like I said, Rice runs an option offense. This is not an offense that drops back to pass. I don't know if this is the offense that's necessarily equipped to give UTSA's defense problems. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Rice is going to have to try to play catch-up because this UTSA offense at home in the Alamo Dome is unstoppable. I know you look at this graphic and you're like, Kyle, UTSA's offense hasn't been very good. Yeah, 105th in success rate, 57th in PPA. Those are some disappointing offensive numbers, but look at their 2 games at home. 42 points per game, over 6.4 yards per play. And this is carrying over from last year. On the season, they averaged over 42 points per game in their home games. This UTSA offense is just different at home. They play indoors in the Alamo Dome. It's tough to stop. It's a very explosive offense, big plays all over the place. We just saw Rice go on the road and see Navy and struggle. I know they held them to 21 points. That's a misleading final score. They allowed almost 7.5 yards per play. So I find it hard to believe that Rice's defense is able to go into the Alamo Dome and stop this offense. UTSA is going to score, and I just don't think Rice can keep up. I'm on the Roadrunners here. Boat race. UTSA, lay it. Georgia, Auburn, not a ton of movement in this one. It was sitting at 3.5 for most of the week. Looks like Georgia did get hit at the 3.5 at 30K limits, though. We're now sitting at 4. Georgia, Auburn at Jordan Hare. This Auburn team, man, back-to-back brutal losses before the bye week. That Oklahoma game, if you watched it, you know they very well could have won that game. The fact that they didn't cover that plus 6.5 is actually criminal. But yeah, they lost to Oklahoma. Then they immediately go to Kyle Field. That final score is actually a little deceiving. They got beat up at Kyle Field. They had a pick 6 to make it 16-10. I mean, Texas A&M was dominating that game. So back-to-back brutal matchups, back-to-back road games on the road at Oklahoma and Texas A&M. It's so crazy because now coming off the bye week, they're at home and they're playing Georgia. It's crazy to think that this Georgia defense is the easiest defense that Auburn's seen in a month. How wild is that? The Georgia Bulldogs. Not that Georgia's defense is bad, but it's certainly not the tough Kirby Smart Georgia defenses from years ago. 29th in success rate, 51st in PPA. Now, I know Auburn isn't perceived to be a strong offensive team at all, but we don't want to sleep on this team. I mean, we're remembering the Auburn offense from the games we just saw. back-to-back games against Oklahoma and Texas A&M on the road, two of the best defenses in the country. Coming off the bye week at home against a Georgia defense that's definitely a little vulnerable. In the last two games, they're allowing 32.5 points per game, over 6.1 yards per play, 43.5% success rate. Jackson Arnold, we know he's having problems with pressure, right? If you watch the Oklahoma game, he was sacked what felt like 25 times. Well, Georgia has not shown us they have the pass rush that Oklahoma or Texas A&M has. So I think Jackson Darnold can make some throws on this Georgia defense. Remember, they've been getting thrown all over. Granted, it was against Tennessee and Alabama. I also think Auburn can run the ball a little bit. I know that sounds crazy. Georgia's got great numbers against the run. They really haven't seen a single team that can run the ball yet. Tennessee's a passing offense with Joey Aguilar. Alabama hasn't been able to run the ball all year. So I actually think Auburn can run the ball as well. I think Auburn's going to move the football in this game. Now, on the other side of the ball, it's tough to make an argument for Auburn's defense stopping this Georgia offense. It looks very strong. 23rd in success rate, 41st in PPA so far in the year. And if we look at the last three games, I mentioned how Georgia's defense has been struggling. The offense really hasn't. 33.3 points per game, 45.7% success rate, over 6.1 yards per play. I will say Tennessee's defense, especially against the pass, not that great right now. They've been missing their starting corners forever. I think they're both out for the year, actually. So Tennessee's been struggling against the pass. We saw Syracuse throwing the ball in Tennessee. Alabama is a legit data point, but that one was at home. Now they go on the road. Auburn's defense has been pretty strong. In their last two games, they lost two tough road games, but defense didn't get lit up. 5.55 yards per play, 43% success rate. I think Auburn's live here. If there was ever a spot for Auburn to knock Georgia off, it's right here at home, coming off the bye week. Buy low on Auburn after back-to-back tough road games. And on top of that, they're retiring Cam Newton's jersey at halftime. Cam Newton will be in the building. Auburn legend. Yeah, I like Auburn in this game. I'm on Auburn plus 3.5. I also bet the under at 47.5. San Diego State, Nevada. Jeff Choate's defense has definitely been a bit of a disappointment this year. 113th in success rate, 91st in PPA. I mean, Jeff Choate's a great coach. I also like the DC they got there, Kane Ione. It's just, they just don't have the horses. They don't have the talent on this team. They lost. Their offense was surprisingly good last year in year one, and they lost the entire offense. So, I mean, Jeff Choate does not have a ton to work with here at Nevada. They're matched up against a San Diego State offense that, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. You could say, hey, Sean Lewis figured it out. We saw this San Diego State offense explode and find themselves last week. And, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong in saying that. They went nuts, and I had the over, so I appreciated it. San Diego State went over the 38.5 by themselves. Scored 45 points against Colorado State, over 8.3 yards per play. They looked explosive. Nothing like the San Diego State offense we've seen up to this point. Came out of nowhere. Here's the problem. Do we look at that game and then all of a sudden we're just throwing the rest of the season out? We're going to ignore how San Diego State's offense has looked pretty bad up to this point. How about specifically their games on the road? In their two road games this year, they're averaging 9.5 points per game. That's not a typo. Not 19.5, 9.5 points per game. Under 3.9 yards per play. We see one good offensive game, and we're just going to ignore the fact that this offense looked terrible for most of the year. And in their road games, they look even worse than terrible. They looked embarrassing. I'm not going to ignore that. This Nevada defense, it's taken a few games, but it's starting to come around. Remember, they've got a great coach in Choate. They've got a good DC there in Kane Ione. I think they're going to be better down the stretch. In their last three games, they're allowing less than 5.4 yards per play, under 22 points per game. They've been pretty solid on this side of the ball. They seem to be trending in the right direction. I think San Diego State's going to struggle to score here. I think Nevada's defense can put up a fight. I know this is not a good football team, but I think the defense is able to give them some problems. Now, on the other side of the ball, I mean, full disclosure, I don't know what Nevada's going to do offensively. Spoiler alert, I'm considering taking the Wolfpack here. I don't know what they're going to do offensively. I don't have an explanation of how they're going to score. San Diego State's defense has been incredible so far this year. 9th in success rate, 7th in PPA, looking like one of, if not the strongest defense in the Mountain West. And Nevada's offense has been an absolute mess. In fact, we don't even know who's playing quarterback here. Chubba Purdy, who I believe is Brock Purdy's brother or cousin, he was the quarterback. He was benched in their last game. He was 0 for 4 with 2 interceptions. He was benched. They haven't even announced if they made a change of quarterback. I don't know who the quarterback is for Nevada right now. So look, I can't give you an explanation as to how Nevada's going to score in this game, but I do think the defense can give San Diego State some problems, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nevada comes out offensively. They know they're going to be overmatched. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Cho comes into this one. We see a couple trick plays, and Nevada steals a touchdown or two in this one. I think Nevada's live. I want to take them. They're terrible. Full disclosure, this is not a good football team, but I want to take them. If it's above a touchdown, I think I'm going to bet the Wolfpack. Give me Nevada.
Couple games I wanted to get to, but I ran out of time. San Jose State. I'm thinking about betting them over Wyoming, and I don't love taking road favorites on the road in Laramie. It's a tough place to go play, but San Jose State, I think they're figuring it out. Remember, there was a lot of hype surrounding that team coming into the year, and then they looked kind of shaky to start the season. Everyone kind of sold their stock. Well, I think they're figuring it out. I bet on San Jose State last week. They came through for me. I think they're going to beat Wyoming on the road. The other one, South Carolina LSU. I kind of want to take the points with South Carolina. The LSU offense looks kind of broken, but I'm not sure about that one. Actually, forget that one. I don't think I'm going to bet that one. I kind of want to take USC over Michigan. We got a Big Ten team traveling across the country, so USC is another bet I'm considering placing. We'll talk about all these on the live show.
Thanks for watching. Like I said before, live show, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live for 2 hours from 10 a.m. up to kickoff. More of a fun thing. We're not doing any deep dives right before kickoff. Just fun, talking some shit, making some picks. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have a good Saturday. Remember to bet responsibly.